We have now heard two very exciting and informative and intriguing presentations of these papers and the author's experience of writing it. One way of characterizing what we are seeing here is what people call the performative idea of science or research, which is that you actually research by doing it. And it's not only the final product, it is the overall process of initial ideas and engagement in the practice, working with the different social practices, and at the same time engage in writing about when you are going through that. So you can say that the results which you can see in EMR are somehow frozen expressions of that performance at a certain point of time, which is ongoing over longer periods of time. And another important aspect of that insight is that the papers are only one part of the gain, one part of the insight which you gain. The other one is the effect of doing that in the settings, and also the personal effect of learning and expanding your skills and capabilities as you move along in this journey. So I'd like to ask from both of the authors here a couple of questions related to this experience. The first one, which I'd like to hear from you, is that what was the sort of specific, most important learning or gain which you gained from learning this article for yourself, and the way in which you look at the world, and would you do it again? And if you would you do it differently, possibly, in the next time?
Do you want me to go first? I think for me, the most powerful part of this journey was really starting to see a set of parallels between our intentions in setting up the work, our interests in the scholarship, and then seeing it repeated in the work itself on a day in and day out basis. And so for Karen and I think, or for Karen and me, I think that this idea of focusing on what the work was giving us in terms of evidence and insights really went back into helping us to shape not only what we would like to do next in terms of shaping and refining the program, but also what we'd like to also study next and what we'd like to write about. So it gave us, the bug to write some more, which is never a bad thing. So yes, we would do it again. Would we do it differently? Yeah, I think it would be interesting to, now that we've done an exploration of translation, to now actually sit down and think about an empirical contribution and what that would look like. And I think there would be real value in asking a community of scholars to really explore all the different kinds of ways to express the outcomes of this work, including shorter, punchier papers that are designed to help other practitioners realize the power of using evidence and really interesting scholarly theory in shaping and reshaping and refining an innovation in practice.
Right. Thank you. What about you, Lou?
Yeah, for me, it really had a lot to do with the fact that a lot of journals out there are very theoretically, scholarly based, and that is their audience. Yes. And we have programs that really want to bridge that gap between the academic and the practitioner. This journal forced us, and my co-author is Dr. Lars Mathiasen, and I to really focus on the practical implications and what a practitioner would really want to see from this article. There's a tendency sometimes in academics to really look around and focus on the theoretical and focus on the literature review, et cetera, and then forget about just why is this important to the practitioner. And I think that's the purpose of this journal. That's what was helpful for me in submitting to the journal. And yes, I would do it again. It was not easy, but I would do it again.
All right. Thank you. Probably it was already covered, but what did you find the greatest challenge? I personally think it, in a way, referring to this performative aspect of research, that there's always this daily work of doing research, and much of that is just collecting data, analyzing it, talking with the people, coordinating things. That's a sort of one part of the practice, and doodling ideas and things like that. But the other aspect of the practice is also being reflective about what you do and reflecting that in the way in which you write and writing that out. So you don't know what you know and what you have to say until you say it out. And that's hard. Everybody knows it's very hard. And we don't shy away from it, because if it would be easy, we wouldn't be sitting here. It's that simple. And I've viewed the role of this journal and myself as a midwife, in the sense that I sort of help in this hard labor's work and to try to deliver out the best ideas in a form which can grow in practice then, if you allow that metaphor. But can you point out any specific issues and challenges which you found during the writing, and what sort of tips would you give to the potential authors of the journal?
Sure.
One of the challenges that I think is important to keep in mind is that when you're doing the work yourself,
Yes.
and you're writing about work that you've invented, you've created, and you've invented it and created it to solve a problem of practice, not because it's part of a research question necessarily, but then you discover afterwards that it has really powerful research implications, that maintaining that objective voice can sometimes be difficult.
Yes.
And I think what's interesting is for the academy, pure objectivity is prized, but I think in practice, a lot of subjectivity is accepted and in fact welcomed. And so finding that stance and going back and forth between them is a really interesting and important exercise in writing for both audiences at once. But also, it reminds you and it asks you to continually interrogate yourself as to whether or not you're just in love with an idea that is yours, or whether or not there's really true research value in this. And I'd like to believe that as you get more and more evidence, saturation, if you will, that tells you something, that you can take a step back and say, okay, I may have created this, but I'm really objectively seeing that there's value in something. At the same time, it's managing that back and forth that I think is really powerful and important.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very, very true, and somewhat related to that, and this is something that that I mentioned in my presentation, the moving back and forth between the scholarly and the practitioner voice is a difficult thing to do. However, it's also a helpful practice because to a certain extent you have to present the rigor, you have to present that this is a scholarly piece, but at the same time it has to be something that really a practitioner wants to read, that finds it interesting, and doesn't have to plow through a bunch of academic jargon to get there. But that is very challenging to go back and forth between a scholarly voice and a practitioner voice. The other great challenge, at least for me, is that, and I think maybe this is true of all research, I don't know, yes. But you write a paper and you do this research and you have all these insights and you think you're very interesting or whatever, and then you have to boil it down really to 3 or 4 really arguments that you can make solidly, and that's very difficult, and that's something that I think the editorial staff was very helpful in my case of just narrowing it down to what 3 or 4 ideas can you make and support in this paper. So very challenging, but worthwhile.
I totally agree with you, and I think this idea of finding a language for each really says that there's something around our becoming bilingual, right? Really being able to speak both languages at the same time. But we're kind of strangers in both camps, right? Because when we talk academically, we're strangers on the practice side, and when we speak practically, we are a little bit strangers on the academic side. So there is this constant discomfort, but I think that's part of what makes our work so great. So that discomfort gives rise to something better, and I think more powerful. And I think the editorial process with EMR was really helpful because it often helped us to remember the academic side and where we came from when we were thinking about this stuff, and it showed us linkages that we didn't necessarily see right away. So it was really powerful process to go through.
Yeah, all right. I have one additional point, which comes many times based on my experience in the sort of review processes in EMR, which is that many of the people who write to, like both of you, who write this journal, they come mostly from the practitioner background. And then this idea that you have to come and revise the articles, and there's a relatively blunt criticism sometimes of the way you have addressed things, and you have think that you have put all your effort, and why are they picking up these things? Can you comment on how to respond to that, and what your experience of dealing with that was? How did you overcome that? And also, what was the value of actually going through all this? Because a lot of people say that, well, I don't have to do it. So my ideas are good enough, and I can write, and things like that. We experienced a lot of people sort of stop in the first round. So what was the value of being persistent here?
Do you want to go first?
Well, first off, how you deal with it is
Yes.
you scream,
Yes.
and you yell, and then you take a walk, and and then you finally settle down, and you actually read through the criticisms, and work through them one by one, and realize that what comes out of it, almost in all cases, and as I mentioned in my presentation, I actually went through 2 to 3 revisions. What comes out of it is really a better scholarly piece, and one that you are most proud of. And I think in terms of personal satisfaction, that to me was to actually have a piece that I was proud of in a journal, in a peer-reviewed journal, was something that meant a lot to me, both, well, primarily just personally.
I couldn't agree with you more, Louis. I think we went through 2 major revisions and then sort of a set of little editorial things at the end. Mm-hmm. I think between the first paper and the second paper, they were 2 different papers.
Yeah.
But I think the second paper was a much better paper. Mm-hmm. And so even though you give up something that you've written, yes, and you have to sort of take another direction, it just ends up being a much better paper when other eyes come in and let you see the way your words are being interpreted and what works and what doesn't. So I think, yes, it's, there's no publish or perish in practice. Yes. And so you're absolutely right. We don't have to continue if we find it painful or if there aren't enough hours in the day. Yes. But what you have at the end is really worthwhile. And as I said initially, I think it really reshaped the way we thought about the research and gave us the energy and the excitement to continue researching. So I'm in favor, even with a little pain. Besides, no pain, no gain, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's all for the moment, and thank you for both the panelists. And
thank you.
I am very happy that I would like to remind for all the people who are looking at this panel that you can go to the website now and read these wonderful articles as an examples of the type of practitioner scholarship which we publish at Engaged Management Review. Thank you.
Thank you.